I want to start with a Tuesday in March, not because it is the most dramatic Tuesday in this story, but because it is the most representative. And representative is what I am trying to give you, rather than dramatic. It is 11 in the morning. I have been awake since 5, which I usually am. A residue from 38 years of running a steel fabrication company in Sheffield, where the morning shift began at 6, and the managing director did not arrive after the people he managed. I have had breakfast, read the news, drunk 2 cups of the instant coffee I prefer to the Thai coffee Sawalik prefers, and I would now like to drive to the old city to meet Marcus for lunch. Marcus has been in Chiang Mai for 12 years. He speaks Thai. He was an engineer before he retired. And on the 2 or 3 Tuesdays a month we manage to meet. He talks to me about things, and I talk to him. And we eat at a place he knows, near Wat Chedi Luang. And the afternoon is the better for it. I would like to go. I have not gone yet because I have not told Sawalik I am going. And I have learned, over the 8 years of this marriage, that the gap between wanting to do a thing and the telling of Sawalik is a space in which many things I want to do quietly stop happening. My name is Robert. I am 71 years old, from Sheffield originally, and from 1984 to 2018, I was the managing director of a steel fabrication business that I built from a 40-person workshop in Attercliffe into a company of 320 employees across 2 sites, with a turnover that, at our peak in 2015, exceeded £40 million a year. I need to give you that number, because I am going to tell you what I have now, and the comparison is the story. £40 million turnover, 320 people, a morning brief at 6:15 that 30 supervisors attended and that I chaired, and that was, I want to use this word precisely, an instrument. The morning brief was how decisions became actions, how the day organized itself around priorities I had set, how problems became visible before they became crises. I ran it the same way for 31 years. With adjustments for technology and scale. And the 31 years of running it well is why the business sold for what it sold for. And the selling price is why I can afford the Chiang Mai house that is in my wife's name. And the house is where I now live as a man who consults rather than decides. And the consulting is what we are here to discuss. I mention this not to impress you, but to establish the register of the man who is sitting in a kitchen in Chiang Mai on a Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock, calculating whether to announce his lunch plans. The register matters, because the whole story is the gap between those 2 men. The one who ran the Sheffield morning brief at 6:15, and the one who rehearses his Tuesday lunch in a kitchen. And the gap is not what you probably think it is, which is a fraud, or a theft, or a deception. The gap is something more ordinary and more interesting. The gap is architecture. I should tell you about the business first, because the business is the other self, and the other self is the measure of everything that follows. I started as a site welder straight out of school at 17, which in Sheffield in 1971 was an entirely unremarkable beginning, and I worked my way to foreman by 24, and to production manager by 30, and by 36 I was running the whole operation, which had by then been through a sale and a near collapse, and a management buyout that I led, and that is the transaction I am most proud of in my professional life. Not because of what it earned, but because it was the moment I understood that I could hold 2 positions simultaneously, frightened and competent. Most leadership comes down to that. You are frightened and you are competent, and which of the 2 the room sees is a choice you make every morning, and I made that choice correctly for 38 years. And the choice is what 320 people depended on, and I was not modest about it, because modesty in that context is a kind of dishonesty. I want to be specific about what authority actually felt like, because I am going to describe the absence of it, and the absence requires the presence first. Running a 300-person company is not power in the way people who have not done it imagine power. It is not a room full of people obeying you. It is a system of dependencies, and you are in the middle of the system, and the system works because the people in it trust that the middle holds. They trust the morning brief. They trust the decisions. They trust that when they bring a problem upward it will be received and processed and produce a response that is consistent with the principles they have watched operate over years. The authority is earned, daily, and it is earned by being reliably the same person that you were yesterday, and the day before, and the year before, and the authority compounds like interest, and the compounding is what 320 people showed up for. I am describing this in detail because what I have in Chiang Mai is the precise inverse, and the inverse is the subject of this recording. I knew what I was doing and I did it, and when I sold the company in 2018 for a price I am not going to state, but that allowed this life, I shook the buyer's hand and drove home to an empty house. I had been divorced since 2011, and I sat in the kitchen and experienced, for the first time since 1984, the specific silence of a man with no morning brief. I came to Thailand in 2016 on a walking holiday in the north. I want to be clear that I was not, at 62, in the category of men who arrive in Chiang Mai looking for something. The years between selling the company in 2018 and moving to Chiang Mai in 2019 are the years I pass over most quickly in this recording and that I should not pass over, because they contain the man I was when Sawalik met the full version of him, not the holiday version. I had retired into Sheffield. My ex-wife and I had separated civilly, and our two sons, Philip, 38, and James, 35, were in Manchester and Leeds respectively, and I saw them monthly, and they were doing well, and I was proud of them, and the pride had a specific quality of completion about it, as though the parenting work were largely done. I sat on the boards of two local charities. I mentored young business owners through a Chamber of Commerce scheme. I read, seriously, for the first time since university, history, mostly, economic and industrial. I was not unhappy. I was, in the retirement advisor's language, finding purpose. And the finding had a pleasantness to it, and also a quality, that I only recognized when Sawalik arrived and removed it, which was the quality of managing something smaller than I had been built to manage. A company of 320 is a complex system. A charity board is not a complex system. I had been running complex systems for 34 years, and the absence of complexity, it turns out, does not produce contentment. It produces a very organized form of restlessness. Sawalik, when I moved to Chiang Mai, did not produce contentment either. She produced engagement, something that required the full version of me. I had not felt the full version of me since the morning brief, and then I retired from the full version into the Tuesday consultation, and the Tuesday consultation is what we are here to examine. I came to Thailand in 2016 on a walking holiday in the north. I was in the category of men who have worked for 38 years without taking a proper holiday and who have been told, repeatedly, by a doctor in Sheffield that the blood pressure numbers require reduction by any means necessary. I walked, I ate, I slept for 9 hours on 2 consecutive nights, which had not happened since approximately 2003. On the 6th day, I met Sawalik at an evening cooking class that my hotel had organized with transparent enthusiasm, and she was helping run it. She worked at the hotel's events office, and she taught me to make khao soi, and laughed at me for not knowing what khao soi was, which is a reasonable response to a man who runs a steel company and has never encountered khao soi. I came back to Chiang Mai in 2017 and in 2018, and by 2019 I had moved there, and in 2020, just before the pandemic, we married. Sawalik is 47, from a village outside Chiang Mai originally, from a family that is not poor and is not wealthy, but that is structured in the way Northern Thai families are structured, which means that her position within it, she is the middle daughter of 3, educated, Bangkok experienced, back in Chiang Mai by choice, comes with obligations and relationships, and a social authority that I did not understand fully when I married her, and that I am still, in year 8, learning to map. She is, by any professional measure I know how to apply, a highly capable woman. She managed the hotel's event calendar with the precision of someone who has internalized a project management methodology without being told it is a methodology. She handles her family's logistics, the grandmother's appointments, the youngest sister's school fees, the cousin's visa paperwork, with the same unhurried efficiency. She is funny. Specifically, in the way that requires intelligence rather than performance. She reads. She has opinions. She is, I want to be very clear about this, the best company I have had since Margaret. And Margaret and I were married for 29 years before the divorce, and I do not make that comparison lightly. She is, I want to be very clear about this, the best company I have had since Margaret, and Margaret and I were married for 29 years before the divorce, and I do not make that comparison lightly. I should give the good years their space before I take them apart, because this is not a story about a bad marriage, and if you treat it as one, you will take the wrong lesson from it. The first 4 years, 2020 through 2023, had the specific texture of a life that has been correctly constructed. She knew where to eat in Chiang Mai in a way that I never will, which means we always ate well, which is not a small thing at 64. She was the person who suggested, in 2021, that we adopt the 2 dogs, and the suggestion was right in the way that suggestions from people who know you better than you know yourself are right. I had not known I wanted dogs, and now I cannot imagine the house without them, and this is entirely her contribution. She has an eye for plants, and the garden at the back of the house is hers, in the way that she fills any space she inhabits. The thing that looked like potential when we bought the house has become, in 5 years, the thing I sit in on Sunday mornings with the coffee, and the Sunday mornings are among the best hours of my retirement. When my older son Philip visited in 2022, she cooked for 3 evenings, and the cooking was the kind that makes a taciturn Sheffield man say, in front of his father, that he had eaten well, which from Philip is an extraordinary declaration. She is funny, and she is sharp, and she is genuinely kind, and I am not saying any of this to soften what follows. I am saying it because the census is the census of a real marriage, and the power it is auditing is the power of a marriage with real warmth in it. And that warmth is also part of the architecture, and it is the part that makes the rest of it bearable, and the part that makes the rest of it complicated. Now, the census. I want to walk through it in order, domain by domain, because the census is the structure of this recording, and the structure is the point. The audit I did was not planned. It was not the result of suspicion or a spreadsheet evening. It was the result of standing in my own kitchen on a Thursday in January, looking at the calendar on the wall, and realizing that I did not know what was written on it. Not because the writing was unclear, because it was in Thai, and I do not read Thai, and the calendar on the wall of my own kitchen in my own house had been in Thai for 4 years, and I had not once asked to have any of it translated, because asking would have been an acknowledgement that it needed translating, and acknowledging that would have been admitting something I had not been ready to admit. Domain 1. Language. This is the primary, the load-bearing domain, the one without which none of the others fully work. I do not speak Thai beyond the market basics, the numbers, the pleasantries, the request for the bill, and I have not learned to speak it properly despite 8 years of intending to. I started a class in 2021 and attended 3 sessions and stopped because I was busy, and because Sawalik managed everything in English when it was important, and the things that were not important did not seem to require me to understand them, and I made that assessment myself. What I did not fully understand at the time was that the determination of what is important is itself a power that I was delegating to the person doing the translation. Every phone call, every neighbor's conversation, every doctor's appointment, every family discussion that required my participation. Sawalik translated what she judged I needed to know, and I received the translation, and I had no independent access to the original, and the gap between the original and the translation is invisible to a man who does not have the language, which is to say, it is invisible to me. I am not accusing her of distorting the translations. I am saying that I do not know, and that not knowing is itself a position, and the position has a name, and the name is dependence. Domain 2. The social world. I had, when I moved to Chiang Mai, the beginning of a social life. 4 or 5 expat men I had met in the first year through the cooking class network, and a British expat group that met on the first Sunday of the month at a bar near Niman. Let me add, before I continue the census, the thing the census requires that I have not yet given, the surrender ledger. In the template of a good audit, you account for what was taken and also what was handed over. And the handing over is my co-authorship of this structure, and I am going to name it The Thai Lessons I Quit in Year 2. Mine. I chose to quit. I constructed the reason. Too busy. She manages it. I did not go back. The British Expat group. I stopped attending after Sawalik mentioned, once, gently, that the group seemed to be mostly men complaining about Thailand, which was partly true and which I accepted as sufficient reason to stop going. And I notice now that accepting a general characterization of a group I valued as sufficient reason to stop participating was a decision I would not have made at the Sheffield morning brief, where I held individual assessments above general characterizations as a matter of professional principle. The third thing, my phone. I have a UK number and a Thai SIM, and Sawalik set up the Thai SIM and knows both numbers. And I once received a call from Marcus on the Thai number while she and I were together, and she answered it before I could. Picked it up from the table, said hello, passed it to me. And the passing to me felt normal, was normal, and was also a data point in the ledger, and I filed it and moved on, because this is what the census reveals. Individually, each of these items is unremarkable. Together they are a pattern, and the pattern has a name, and the name is the same as the one I have been circling since the Tuesday in March. Domain 2. The social world. Marcus I met in year 1. There were 2 others, a retired dentist from Edinburgh and a former schoolteacher from Kent, with whom I had regular contact through 2020. The dentist left during the pandemic, repatriated. The schoolteacher stayed but shifted his social world toward a Thai girlfriend who preferred the Nimmenhamen restaurants, and we lost the regularity. The first Sunday group dissolved when its organizer moved to Koh Samui in 2022, and nobody replaced him. These are not suspicious events. People move. Groups dissolve. What I am auditing is my own response to them, which was, I did not rebuild. I did not find new people or reactivate dormant contacts or join anything. I withdrew, by increments, into the household, and the household is Sawalik's domain in the full sense of that word, and in the household, I am the person who consults rather than decides. The audit question is whether the withdrawal was mine or whether it was managed, and the answer, after a full year of examining it, is both, and the both is the whole of what I am trying to tell you. Domain 3. The diary. I am a man who has kept a physical diary since I was 32, the kind with a page per day and columns for appointments and notes, and I transferred this habit from Sheffield to Chiang Mai with the same discipline I transferred everything else, which is to say, completely. In 2020 I began keeping the Chiang Mai house calendar as well, the wall calendar, the domestic one, and for the first year I entered my own appointments in English, and the household events were empty boxes until Sawalik filled them in. What I am auditing now, in year 8, is the ratio. I enter perhaps 4 or 5 items a month. The rest are Sawalik's, in Thai, and the Thai entries include things that affect my week: visitors, family obligations, car use requirements, social commitments, and the not reading them means the not knowing them, and the not knowing them means the discovering them on the morning they arrive. And the discovering them on the morning they arrive is the position of a man who is managed rather than a man who manages. Domain 3. The diary, continued. I am a man who has kept a diary since 1980, professional and personal, and the diary was always my own. In Chiang Mai the diary became negotiated, by degrees so gradual that I cannot point to a single moment of transition. Family events, the grandmother's birthday, the temple ceremonies, the school events for the cousin's children, were entered by Sawalik, in her writing, on the physical calendar that I do not read. My own appointments, the doctor, the accountant, the Tuesday lunches when they happen, were entered by me, but the calendar is the shared one, which means that a Tuesday lunch requires a space in the calendar that is not already Sawalik's, and the determination of what is already Sawalik's is made by Sawalik, and the consultation that should precede the entry has become, in practice, a request that is sometimes granted and sometimes redirected. I want to be exact. She does not refuse. She redirects. The Tuesday lunch that I want for March becomes the Thursday, because her cousin is visiting on Tuesday, and it would be rude to be out. And Thursday, she says, would be better. And on Thursday, Marcus is not available, and the lunch does not happen. And this is the 10th time in the past 18 months that the lunch has not happened in the form I planned, and Marcus has begun texting me on Wednesdays to ask if this week is possible, and I tell him I will check, and the checking is the thing I am telling you about. Domain 3 is the one I kept last because it is the most personal, the diary. I am a man who has kept a physical diary since 1980, the kind with a page per day and columns for appointments and notes, and the habit transferred from Sheffield to Chiang Mai without modification. The household wall calendar I began maintaining in 2020, in the same spirit. Year 1. The calendar was mostly empty, my entries in English, Sawalik's editions occasional. Year 4. The ratio had inverted. Year 8. My entries are perhaps 4 or 5 a month. Sawalik's fill the rest, and the rest includes events that affect my week. Visits, family commitments, car requirements. Entered in Thai. Undiscussed. Discovered on the morning they arrive. This is not a complaint about Sawalak's organization. Her organization is excellent. It is an audit of what the excellent organization produces as a secondary effect, which is a man who learns about his own week the way a passenger learns about the journey, competently informed, at the appropriate stage, by the driver. Domain 4. The house. I bought the house. I want that on the record because it is relevant to everything that follows, and because the law does not permit it to be on the record in any other way. The house is in Sawalak's name because the land is always in a Thai national's name, as it must be, as I understood when I bought it, as I signed a declaration confirming at the land office in 2020 that the money was a gift and was her personal property. I own nothing. I occupy with her permission. This was a rational arrangement when I made it, and it remains a rational arrangement, and I am not here to tell you it was a trap or a fraud. The law in Thailand is what it is, and it was the correct legal structure. What I am here to tell you is what it feels like, after 8 years, to live in a house I do not own as a guest, in a residence I funded, and it feels like the house rules are not mine to set. The cleaner comes on Thursdays, not Tuesdays, because Sawalik prefers Thursdays. The bedroom is arranged in a way that I found unfamiliar for a year, and that I now do not notice, which is not the same as finding it correct. The dogs. We have 2 small Thai dogs that Sawalik loves, and that regard me with the polite indifference of animals who understand the hierarchy of the household. Sleep in the bedroom on Sawalak's side. I have raised the dogs twice in 7 years as a topic, and been given an explanation I accepted on both occasions, and on the second occasion I understood that a third raising would produce a conversation I was not certain I was capable of having on the terms available to me in Thai, so I did not raise it again, and the dogs sleep in the bedroom. Domain 5. Information. I do not open the post. The post arrives mostly in Thai, and I cannot read it, which is a simple fact. But the consequence of the simple fact is that Sawalik manages all the documentary infrastructure of our household, the utilities, the insurance, the banking notifications, the government correspondence. I see what she shows me, which is what I need to act on. I do not see what I do not need to act on, which is a system that works for the operational running of the household and that produces, as a secondary effect, a man who does not know the details of his own life in the way he used to know the details of a company of 320. In Sheffield, I knew the P&L to 2 decimal places and the name of every supervisor and the delivery lead times for our 12 main suppliers, and the current position on every outstanding contract. In Chiang Mai, I know the name of the cleaning woman, the fee for my accountant in Sheffield who still handles my UK affairs, and the time of the Tuesday lunch that I have not attended in 6 weeks. Domain 5. Information. And within it, the medical. I have a cardiologist in Sheffield who I see annually when I go back for the grandchildren in July, and I have a GP in Chiang Mai, a Thai doctor who speaks English well and who I trust, and the 2 systems are managed by me, for me, without significant intervention. This is one of the domains I hold cleanly, And I am honest about that in the census. Not everything has transferred. But the medical appointments in the Thai system, the ones that come through Sawalik's family network, the clinics she prefers, the follow-up on a chest thing I had last year that resolved itself and that I went to with her, those appointments are conducted partly in Thai, and what is said to her and what is then said to me are not the same length of sentence, and the shortening is not dishonest. It is the translation of technical to lay, but the translation is done by the person in the room with the language, and the person in the room with the language is my wife, and the person who receives the translation is a man who ran a 320-person company on the principle that you get the information from the source, and you do not accept the summary as the document. I accept the summary. I am working on not accepting it. The Thai lessons will help. They will also reveal the size of what I have been accepting, and I am prepared for that. Domain 6. The family. Sawalik's family is present in our life, in the way that Thai extended families are present. Not intrusively, not financially. Her family has not asked me for money, and I have not been in the position of Gordon from Leeds, and I want to be clear about that distinction, because it matters. But structurally, her mother comes to stay periodically, and during those visits the household reorganizes around her mother in ways that I am not consulted on and that I understand are not mine to be consulted on. Because the mother is the elder, and the elder's comfort is the family's priority. Her sister visits less regularly, but when she comes, she and Sawalik talk for hours in Thai, and the talking occurs, usually, in the rooms where I would otherwise be, and I relocate, because there is nowhere in the house where the talking is not occurring. My own family, my 2 sons, my ex-wife whom I maintain a civil relationship with for the sake of the grandchildren, visits Thailand approximately never. Not because they are unwelcome, but because Sheffield is far, and the airfare is significant, and one of my sons has small children, and the other has a work schedule that does not permit 3 weeks in Thailand. My most regular contact with them is on the telephone, and the telephone calls happen, mostly, in my study, which is the one room in the house that is recognizably mine, and which is small, and which the dogs do not enter. The reveal happened at a family meeting in November. I want to be precise about this, because the reveal was not a document or a discovery in the usual sense. It was a gathering, a Sunday evening, 5 people in the living room, Sawalik and her mother and her 2 sisters, and an uncle, whose specific relationship to the family I have never fully understood. The meeting was about a family property in Chiang Mai, something to do with the management of a plot of land that the grandmother's estate has left in some kind of contested state. I was in the meeting. I was seated at the table. Tea was brought. The conversation began, in Thai, and continued for approximately 40 minutes, and I understood, from tone and from 2 or 3 words I recognized, that it was a discussion of some financial and legal complexity. I was not addressed at any point. I was not consulted. I was not asked for a view or an opinion or the benefit of 38 years of running a company that included, among other things, legal disputes about property. I was the man at the table who was served tea and smiled at, and who was present in the room while decisions that may or may not affect the household I live in were made in a language I cannot speak. At the end of the meeting, the uncle nodded at me with the specific warmth of a man acknowledging a person whose role at the table he is unclear about, and Sawalik translated. The family had decided to appoint a property manager for the Chiang Mai plot. I said that sounded sensible. She smiled and agreed. I have not been told whether the property manager has been appointed, and I have not asked, and I realized when I decided not to ask that the deciding not to ask is itself a domain. I should give you a specific image from year 5 that I carry as the clearest single picture of the gap, because I think images are more honest than analysis when you are auditing a life. In March 2023, Sawalik's sister came to visit from Chiang Mai with her husband, and we had dinner together at the house, and the dinner was excellent and warm, and included me fully in the English that all 3 of them speak. The sister's husband mentioned at one point that he had heard I had been in business, and I said yes, fabrication, and he asked what kind, and I explained, structural steel mostly, construction and industrial, and he asked how many people, and I said 320 at the peak, and I described the management buyout because it was the part that was interesting, and he listened with the genuine attention of a man who finds this impressive, and for about 20 minutes, I was the person I used to be in every room. And then dessert arrived and the conversation shifted to Thai, and I sat at my own dinner table eating the mango sticky rice my wife had made, and listening to a language I do not speak, and the 20 minutes folded back into the fabric of the evening, and by the time the sister and her husband left, I was, again, the man who asks about Tuesday. That is the command ghost. The reflex of authority surfacing for 20 minutes and then folding back. I know what I was. I know what I am. And the gap between those two things is not a tragedy. At 71, a man whose company of 320 sold for what mine sold for is not a tragic figure by any objective measure. But it is the thing I am examining in this recording, because the gap has a shape that I designed partly myself, and the designing is what I am responsible for, and the Wednesday morning conversation is what I am doing about it. Marcus. I have been building to Marcus because Marcus is the only person in my Chiang Mai life who knows both languages. And knowing both languages means he is the only person available to me who can give me an independent account of things. And he has been doing that, in small ways, for about 3 years. He is the one who told me, 2 years ago, that a conversation I had been told was about the family's rice harvest plans was, based on the fragment he overheard at a dinner we all attended, actually about the Chiang Mai property, and the question of who would manage it. He told me this carefully, because he knows Sawalik, because they like each other, and because he is not interested in being the instrument of a marriage's destruction, only in making sure his friend has an accurate map. His telling me cost him, I think. The dinners have been less frequent since then. He still texts on Wednesdays. He is the most loyal person in my Thailand life, and I am having lunch with him on Tuesday, and I am going to tell Sawalik now, this morning, before I make any other plan, because the telling is the beginning of the new terms I have decided to require. I should say something about the dogs, because the dogs are the most honest detail in this whole audit. They are 2 small Thai dogs, one tan and one white with patches, both named by Sawalik, and they arrived in year 3, and they are, as I have said, exclusively Sawalik's, in the emotional economy of the household. They greet her at the door. They follow her from room to room. They allow me to interact with them with the patient courtesy of animals who have established their preferred person and are being polite to the others. I raised the dogs sleeping in the bedroom twice, as I have noted, and twice I was given a reason and I accepted it, and on the third potential raising, I understood that the conversation about the dogs was a conversation about something larger, and that I was not certain, at that moment, in year 6, that I had the positional authority to have the larger conversation. So I did not raise the dogs. They still sleep in the bedroom. On Tuesday mornings when I am doing the census in my head, sitting at the kitchen table with the instant coffee, the dogs are on the sofa. The sofa is theirs. They know it is theirs. They know it without it having been declared. The knowing without declaration is the most precise description I have of the whole architecture, and it applies to the calendar and the language and the social world and the property and the family meeting, and the dogs are the smallest version of it, and the smallest version is sometimes the clearest. The conversation happened last week, and I am going to give it to you in full, because the conversation is the thing this recording is actually about. I told Sawalik on a Wednesday morning that I was going to have Tuesday lunches with Marcus regularly, and that they were going to be in my diary under my own writing, and that I was not going to ask whether Tuesday was available. I told her calmly, and I told her in the voice I used at the Sheffield morning brief. Not unkind, not angry, not apologetic, and I told her that I was also going to start Thai lessons again, properly, with a teacher, and that the calendar was going to be bilingual from now on. Or she could explain the Thai entries to me monthly and keep them in Thai, and we could discuss which she preferred. She listened to all of this. She did not respond immediately. There was a silence of about 30 seconds, which is a long silence. And I have had 38 years of watching people decide things in silences, and I recognized this one. It was the silence of a person recalibrating rather than resisting, which is a different silence, and a more productive one. She said, "The Tuesday is fine." She said, "The Thai lessons are a good idea." She said something then that I was not expecting, and that I have thought about every day since, which was, "Robert, I did not notice I was doing this." I believe her. I believe her not because I am naive. A man who ran a steel company for 38 years is not naive about the self-interested decisions people make without examining them, but because the specific texture of what had developed between us is more consistent with accumulation than with intention, and because the honest look on her face when she said it was the honest look I have known for 8 years, and I know her face, and that was not performance. She had grown into the position the same way I had grown into my company, by increments, each of which felt like the natural next step, none of which was individually significant, and the total of which was a structure so embedded that she had stopped seeing it as a structure. This is what I meant at the beginning when I said the gap between the two men is architecture. Nobody built it as a trap, we both walked into it, from different directions, and the walking took 8 years. The new terms are 2 months old now, and I want to report on them honestly rather than optimistically. The Tuesday lunches have happened 3 times in 8 weeks. Last Tuesday, Marcus and I sat at the place near Wat Chetty Luang and ate for 2 hours, and he told me about a drainage dispute his neighbor is having, and I told him about the family meeting in November, which I had not told anyone before, and he listened in the way that bilingual men listen when they already know one side of the story, which is with the patience of a person who is deciding how much to say, and what he said was enough. The calendar has 2 columns now, Thai on the left, English on the right, and the translation is Sawalik, and I have no way to verify it, and the verification is still the gap, but the gap is smaller than it was, and smaller is what I have. I am not going to tell you that the conversation on the Wednesday morning fixed things. The structure of 8 years is not fixed by a Wednesday morning, and any man who has run an organization knows that a culture built over a decade does not change in a memo. What I am going to tell you is that I have, in 2 months, visited Marcus 3 times on my own initiative, and that Sawalik has noted this without comment, and that the silence with which she has noted it is a different silence from the one I used to manage. It is a silence that contains awareness rather than arrangement, and awareness is the starting point for anything that comes next. And I am going to tell you the only practical advice I have, which is this: audit the domains early, not with suspicion and not with a spreadsheet, just with the question a good managing director asks once a year of every function: who is making the decisions here? How? And does that match the structure we agreed? In a household, in a Thai marriage, in any arrangement that runs over years in a country whose language you do not speak, ask the question while the answer is still recoverable. I asked it in year 8. The answer was informative. The year it becomes unaskable is the year you are sitting in your study with the dogs outside the door, rehearsing your Tuesday lunch to a kitchen that belongs to someone else. Let me be specific about the 2 columns, because this recording has given you the audit, and I want to leave you with the columns as they stand today, 2 months into the new terms. His column, the Tuesday lunches, now 3 in 8 weeks. The Thai lessons, which begin next month, 6 sessions paid in advance, so that I do not have the option of stopping, for the reason of inconvenience. The calendar, now bilingual, my entries in English beneath hers in Thai. A question asked directly at the dinner table last week about the Chiang Mai property, which she answered directly, and the directness surprised her, I think, in the way that a management style you have forgotten is available surprises you when you encounter it again. Her column, the same organizational competence, the same household efficiency, the same warmth, and, this is the column entry that matters most, a visible awareness of the shape of things that was not there before the Wednesday morning. She has not changed her nature. She has noticed the architecture. The noticing is the beginning of the renegotiation. And the renegotiation is not about power. It is about 2 people who built an architecture together without quite seeing it, and who are now seeing it, and who are deciding together what to do next. And the deciding together is, after 8 years, the newest thing that has happened in this marriage. I am not going to claim it is going well. I am going to claim it is going. And going, in Chiang Mai, at 71, after 38 years of the morning brief and 8 years of the Tuesday consultation, going is enough. Going is the column I am adding to.